if that were to pass and the gas tax be raised, conditional on that, that meant that every metro area in Oregon would have to come up with a program to reduce greenhouse gases. And in Metro's case, we would have to come up with a program and then implement it when it's done. And we're going through that process. In fact, I'll be going and giving a presentation to the state next month on where we are in that process. But the requirement is that we come up with a plan to reduce greenhouse gases by 20% that's emitted from cars and light trucks, 20% from 2005 levels by 2035. They've given us those many years to come up with a plan and then make it work, make it happen. Metro's been working on a multi-phase approach, working on trying to come up with a plan that would achieve that. And the first phase, of course, was to just evaluate where are we now and where are we headed. And then once we would consider that, then you look at where do we need to go from there to achieve the goal. And then thirdly, then come up with a list of actually measurable tasks that we could do to reach that goal. Now we've gone through phase one, we're getting to the end of phase two. We've put together 3 different scenarios, and then we're evaluating where those will take us. Scenario number 1 is, what are we doing today? What are communities and the state and the jurisdictions in the Portland metro area, what are we doing today that maybe is different than we used to, and what's that effect going to be? What's the impact going to be? Scenario number 2 is, what would happen if we actually did all of the things that we say we want to do? You know, every community in my district and in the Portland metro area has like land use plans and transportation plans. We want to build a better downtown. The Aloha-Reedville Study is a perfect example of that. Every other community in the metro area has a similar plan. What do we do to revitalize our downtown? Where do we need to improve streets and roads so traffic flows more smoothly? Where can we put trails for people to walk or ride their bikes so they're not as dependent on their cars? Where do we need to put sidewalks so people are safe and can get to transit? And what do we need to do to work with TriMet to get better transit? Every community has a plan to do all those things. But those plans were typically designed and based on how much money we all had before 2008. So the scenario number 1 is, what are we really doing now in the face of a reduced economy? Scenario number 2 is, what would happen if we really did everything that we said we want to do? If we could actually actuate our entire transportation system plan that we have in place. Then scenario number 3 is, what would happen if we basically did everything that we can think of that we know would improve and reduce greenhouse gases? This is like, to me, pie in the sky. What would happen if 20% of people rode their bikes to work? What would happen if we had a complete public transportation system that was so efficient and so convenient that half of the people in the region would be able to use it to get around on a regular basis? These are not things that are even planned to have happen, but are at least theoretically feasible. I'm guessing where we're probably going to end up with a plan that we'll try to implement will be phase 2. What do we do if we do everything we say we want to do? Plus, what other 2 or 3 things are we going to have to pull out of the pie in the sky and try to make those happen as well to get down to that level that we're required to make? My concern is that we're going to find out with scenario 2, what everybody wants to do, that we're going to get to within that close. Maybe we're going to make 90 or 95% of that reduction that we're being asked to make. But then to get that last little bit, anybody who's ever done a home improvement project knows that last little bit is the hardest part to get. And I'm concerned that we're going to discover that what we would need to do to achieve that last little bit is going to cost more than everything else all put together. And that might not be something that we'll ever be able to achieve. That's my worry. I'm interested as we go through the process to see where we wind up. Now, my staff has told me that it's at least feasible that just scenario 2, doing all the things that we want to do, will get us there. But we'll see. In May, we have a milestone where all the local partners with all the jurisdictions in the area are going to be reviewing where we are in the process, and they'll be voting on whether or not to support moving forward with the final evaluation on those scenarios. The findings from that evaluation, assuming they vote yes, and we're assuming they will, then they'll be shared with the cities and counties this fall with the goal of developing a draft of a preferred scenario, a list of stuff we would do, by March of next year, of 2014. There are multiple opportunities for us to receive input from our regional partners and also from the public. If you go on to the Metro website, there's an area where you can click on Climate Smart Communities. There's a thing called opt-in, a survey that you can answer a bunch of questions and tell how you feel about certain things and which direction you would like to see things go. Metro has been having and will continue to have a series of open houses and public forums where people can hear what's happening and share their thoughts as well. And that will continue through the entire process. So that's where we stand on that. That's going to be a big challenge to the area. The rest of the metro areas in the state of Oregon, and there are a bunch of them, think of Bend and Medford and Pendleton, et cetera, they all need to come up with a plan too. But the legislation that was passed by the legislature does not require them to implement them. But Metro, we have to actually implement the program. I think all the other metro areas are probably sitting and waiting to see what we do, and they'll probably emulate what we come up with. That would be my guess. So climate smart communities, it's very challenging and interesting. I know there are people who are a little skeptical about climate change. My own position is that I acknowledge that global warming is happening, that temperatures are rising from what we've seen in the past. I have not personally seen what I consider hard evidence that proves that it's human caused. But on the other hand, I believe in clean air and clean water, and I believe in having a strong and vibrant community that has a good downtown, that has good transit, that has good walking paths and things. And I think we have a duty to try to leave the world a little better off, cleaner than we got it. And so I can go along with this entire process because it achieves goals that I personally have as well. It's just fortunate that all the things we want to do with our communities with regards to improving them, like the Aloha-Reedville plan, also go toward reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases. So I'm supportive of it for that reason. Let's see, some other things that are, okay, here's another one that's just as boring and contentious, and that's the urban growth management process. Let's talk about that. People ask me how things are going on Metro. I'm pretty new. And so everybody getting along down there, and I said, well, yeah, we're all getting along fine, but we haven't done a budget yet, and we haven't done an urban growth boundary review, so it's still kind of the honeymoon period. We'll see how that lasts once we've done some of those. Urban growth management process. Every 5 years, Metro is required to forecast population and employment growth for the region for the next 20 years. And determine whether the existing UGB can accommodate that growth. It's coming up again, believe it or not. Seems like we just did it, but we're doing it again. The forecast analysis will take place next year in 2014. We determine if there's enough capacity. If there isn't, then we figure out what to do about it. We're early in the timeline of just starting that. The urban growth report is, we'll have a draft by the summer of next year. We need to accept a final report by the end of 2014. That's required by statute. We must do that. Then we need to act on that and come up with a growth management decision by the end of 2015. We don't have to do it by then. It may take until 2016 to get that done, depending just on workload and how difficult of an analysis it turns out to be. But the statutory requirement is that we have the urban growth report by the end of 2014. Something that's a little more fun to talk about is Metro's Natural Areas program. If you remember, there have been two bond measures, one in 1995 and one in 2006, where Metro asked the region's residents for approval to bond money to get income to buy natural areas. And in both cases, the measures passed by a significant margin. People are excited about that. Metro has moved forward with purchasing property. They'd been given some by Multnomah County. It's kind of how they got into the parks business in the first place. But between that and what they've purchased with the bond proceeds, Metro now owns or manages more than 16,000 acres of parks and open space, including over 100 miles of stream and river frontage. And it includes wetlands and prairies and forests. So we're moving forward. We've spent about 2/3 or 3/4 of the money. We still have some, and we've achieved the goal. The goal was we promised that we would buy at least 4,500 acres. Well, we've actually bought about 12,000 acres. So we've more than achieved what we thought we might be able to do. Some of the money can be spent on development of properties and restoration, but it's limited by the language of the measure. Most of it has to be spent for the purchase of property. And one of the primary goals of purchase of property is for protection of stream corridors, for water quality, also for wildlife habitat. When you have a large urban area getting more and more densified as there's more and more development, you need to protect some of that, and also provide places where people can access for recreation as well. To me, that's an important part of it. If you provide access to these natural areas, people believe they own them and love them and want to take care of them. If you block them off from them, that they don't care. So I think it's important that it be accessible to the public as well. Recent updates. We bought 147 acres between Chehalem Ridge Natural Area, right over here to the south, and the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge just recently. We bought a big chunk of something called the Canama Bluffs, which is if you're on 205 and you're headed toward Oregon City and you come around the corner and you look across the Willamette River and there's those big bluffs on the other side. Those are the Canama Bluffs. And we own several chunks, but there was a big gap in the center, and we just recently were able to purchase that one piece. So now we have a large contiguous section in there. While a lot of areas aren't formally open to visitors, believe it or not, those parks and natural areas that are owned by Metro are visited by more than 1.3 million people every year. Now, I suspect it's the same people more than once, but there's that many visits a year at least. People use them for hiking and walking, fishing, bird watching, and actually weddings and things like that, special events. Something that's happening here in the western part of the metro area, Metro Council adopted the master plan for the Ice Age Tonkin Trail that goes from Tualatin down through Wilsonville, ties into the Fano Creek Trail, and will tie into the West Side Trail. The West Side Trail master plan is getting close to completion thanks to feedback from the public. That will be a 25-mile north-south trail, which will connect the Tualatin River and King City all the way up to Forest Park in Portland.
Are there maps of that on any website?
Oh yeah, if you go onto the Metro website, there's a link to trails and plans for trails, and look for the West Side Trail, and it'll give you an update on all the things and show the mapping of where that's planned to go.
Thank you.
I've already been talking longer than I thought I would. Very briefly, Metro is looking at partnering with Hyatt Hotels and having a convention center hotel built next to the convention center in downtown Portland. We hear over and over again that the convention center cannot be used as it should be because conventions won't come here because there aren't enough hotel rooms. So we can get a lot more convention business and bring more people in, tourists into Portland, if we had a convention center hotel. So we're in negotiations with with the Hyatt Group to build a 600-room hotel across the street to the north from the convention center. There certainly will be some public money involved in that to sweeten the deal, to incentivize them to come in and build the hotel. The question is, why is it appropriate for there to be public money involved? If it's a good idea, why doesn't a hotelier just want to come in and do it anyway? My answer to that is because when we go to a hotelier and say, we want a convention center hotel, but we want it to be here on this location, we want it to be this size, this level of services and requirements for services, and you have to be willing to block out chunks of hundreds of rooms and hold them and reserve them, so in case a convention center a convention wants to come to town, those rooms are available. When an agency or a government entity starts putting those kinds of requirements on a private business, then it's only fair that they have some skin in the game. But the deal has got to make sense. We're still in negotiation. We're getting close, I think. But I'm not going to be willing to vote yes on it, and the Metro Council is not going to be willing to vote yes on it unless it makes sense for the region to have that, and it would be a plus and a benefit to the region. Lastly, I'd like to talk just for a minute about the zoo. All of you perhaps know, have you heard of Lily? Lily, our new baby elephant. One of the bennies of being a new Metro Councilor is I got a behind-the-scenes tour of the zoo, and I got to pet Lily and feed her. That was very fun. We're going to break ground in construction on a new elephant exhibit. The existing elephant exhibit is about 1 1/4. The zoo director says 1.5 acres if you count every closet. We're planning and have the funding for a new elephant exhibit that'll be over 6 acres. It'll provide a much more natural habitat for the elephants to live in. Will allow them to roam more and choose to either congregate together or go off by yourself if you want, in a variety of different environments, whether it be a sandy area or a grassy area or a treed area, that they can choose to be in those different areas. We'll also provide better experience for visitors. The area will be a depressed area with a walkway around it where you can look down in and see the elephants, a large walkway that goes over the top, and an indoor area where the elephants will be able to choose to go, but people will be able to go in there and be able to see them in the indoor area as well. It's going to be 10 times better than what we have now, and we already have one of the best. We're recognized as having one of the best elephant programs in the world, and this will put us over the top. I don't know if you know, but zoos from all over the world come to Portland to see how we do it, to see how we do elephants. Recently, it's been reported there are a lot of zoos around the world, the United States, that are doing away with their elephant exhibits because they're not good for the animals. And for the zoos that are doing that, it's a good idea because they are not willing to do what needs to be done to provide a good habitat. But the Portland Zoo, the Oregon Zoo, does it right, and we can be proud of that. It'll be a great exhibit. The worst part of it is that during construction, the zoo train will be out of commission because where we're putting this is where the tracks currently run. So it'll be out of commission for probably an entire season, and that's unfortunate. But it'll be worth it in the end. It'll be very good. Now let's talk about the Southwest Corridor Plan and how it compares to, first, any questions on the topics that I brought up so far? Climate smart communities, natural areas, urban growth management, hotel and zoo. Yes, sir.
Not a question as much as just a comment. What really muddies the water on climate issues is the difference between climate change and global warming. Climate change has always happened.
Sure.
It's a dynamic rock we live on, not static. And so climate change, I accept that 100%.
Yeah, the sun's going to go down pretty soon here too, but there's not much we can do about that either, right? Yeah.
That's right. So just, as an aside, when people talk about it, they need to make the correct reference.
That's a good point. People tend to use the terms interchangeably, and they're really not interchangeable, are they? Yeah.
I worked on Jim Bridger coal mine doing groundwater studies in Rock Springs, Wyoming, strip coal mine. And outside their generation facility, they had this huge rock that had a fossil of a palm leaf in it. Well, right now, that part of Wyoming has 6-inch high sagebrush. And there used to be palm trees there. Yeah, climate changes.
Well, yeah, if you look back over the geological age of the Earth, having ice at the poles is rare.
Yeah.
Over most of the Earth's history, there isn't any.
Yeah.
So the Earth is often warmer than it is right now. Yeah.
That leads into one of my questions, one of my many questions. In the past, there's been problem with acid rain in the Great Lakes region.
That's probably yeah.
And that was a fairly localized issue that was able to be taken care of, and they don't really have that problem anymore. If you believe in global warming due to increased greenhouse gases, and you're trying to reduce them in an area, you may be able to meet certain targets, but my understanding is every 2 weeks a new coal-fired power plant in China opens up. And it seemed to me that you could spend $10 billion and work 30 years on something that in 2 weeks would be negated by something going on in China.
Yeah.
So I like what you said about focusing on revitalization and other things like that. As a community member, I would push anybody listening to concentrate on more concrete things. And you know, I know that you have this mandate, but what if you don't meet the target?
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Sometimes you can go for the target knowing you're not going to meet it because there's no downside.
Right.
The government in 30 years isn't going to take away your gas money.
There's no nobody's going to jail if we don't meet the target. But there could be consequences if we can't demonstrate that we've done what we can do to try to do it. It could have consequences when it comes to trying to get future road funding, those kinds of things. It's like the federal government says, sure, you can make the speed limit in your state anything you want, but if it isn't 55, you're not getting any money, road money.
Speaking of getting road money, then we get to the levy, and my understanding, the argument against the current, you have a new levy for operating expenses, is that right? For the parks? For the parks,
yeah. It's going to be on the ballot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people that oppose that say they borrowed all this money in the past, they bought parks, and now they need more money because they didn't set aside money to maintain them. How do you address that issue? Because I was not involved with passing the Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District $100 million bond, but I'm on the oversight committee. Okay. And they seem to have gotten enough money to buy what they wanted and to maintain it without having to go back. How does Metro justify their case for what they've done?
When the bond measures were done, first of all, you can't do a bond measure for operations. It has to be for capital improvements or purchases. So you can't do a bond and say we're going to use this to run the parks. It's illegal. You can't do it. You can do it with a levy, which is what this thing that's on the ballot now is a serial levy. But at the time when we did the polling and asked people what they wanted, what will you vote for in this bond measure? And they said, we want it to be to buy and preserve open space, take privately owned land that's potentially at danger of being either degraded, logged, developed, something, buy it, put it into public ownership where it can be protected, preserved. And basically people said, that's what we'll vote for. We won't vote for it if it's for developing a bunch of parks. And so that was kind of conditional on how it was done. They were up front at the time saying this isn't money for running this once we have it. This is to buy the land. Similarly, when I was the mayor of Tigard, we went for a bond measure. And we were very clear, this is an opportunity to buy land that's under threat of development or whatever. This does not include money. It would be great if we had the money to do that too, but yes, the economy's bad. But if we can buy this land now and get it preserved later when we're all rich again, then maybe we can figure out a way to do something else with it. But let's at least preserve the land so that it's not lost forever. And so I think the attitude at Metro was somewhat similar. Metro has had money to do limited amounts of improvements and restoration. A lot of the land they buy is already degraded. There's a lot of invasive species, things like that, and they've been going in and cleaning them up. How many of you are familiar with the Cooper Mountain Park area?
Oh, yeah.
That's an example of what Metro has been able to do with the money they did have. But because of the economic climate and difficulties that local governments are continuing to have with reduced revenues, the pot of money that they've been using is literally, it's going to dry up. We've had a backlog of money that we've been using, and it's gone as of this year. We will not be able to do next year what we've done this year because that pot of money is now gone. So this is, to some extent, this levy is to backfill what we've been doing with other revenue sources that are now gone, but it'll also allow us to do more than we've done, and it'll allow us to do what we've been able to analyze the lands we have and figure out what it is we need to do, what level of effort it takes to bring these back to health and then keep them that way. And that's what this levy is for, and that's the amount of money that has been calculated that we need to do that.
Councilor, to your left, you have Becky Jarvis with a question.
I have a question, because I mean, at the CPO meetings, we've had TriMet come a few times over the years, and the one thing that Aloha folks keep saying is the lack of north-south bus routes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me to go to the TriMet Max bus stop, or Max, got to hop in the car, drive, hope that there's a parking space, and with that hassle, it's much easier just to get on 26 and go downtown and bypass the Max.
I hear you.
And yet, knowing from articles in the Oregonian and having, Cascade policy person come a few months ago, TriMet is on the verge of bankruptcy because of their benefits package, and they're not going to be sticking money in Aloha to improve bus service, and without that, you're not going to get people out of the cars.
Mm-hmm. TriMet has had some real challenges between the PERS program and that was done at the state level, and then because the economic downturn has meant reduced revenues for them. It's interesting. On the one hand, people say when times are bad, government needs to tighten their belt and live within their means. Well, the kinds of cutbacks that Metro has done to bus service and whatnot, that's what they're doing. They're living within their means. It means reductions in service. Fortunately, it looks as though that's beginning to turn around. We've heard we've gotten some recent announcements from TriMet that they're going to be making improvements to service here on the west side. They've identified ways to do that. Revenues are back up a bit, people are riding the bus, things are doing a little bit better, and so they're going to be able to begin to make improvements again. Not necessarily restoring the same service they had before, because frankly there are some areas that didn't have very good service that needs more service, and other areas that traditionally had a lot of service that, like on the east side, for instance, they really don't need the level of service. Some of the routes are low performing, so they can transfer some of those revenues, those resources somewhere else. So they're already beginning to look at places where they can do improvements to service. And I think maybe you may be familiar with the west side enhanced service that the Metro is talking about, running from the Sunset Transit Center out through the northern part of the county, out like Evergreen and that direction. And they plan on looking at routes all across the west side, kind of going north to south and finding other ways. They can take existing routes, consolidate existing routes, or maybe new routes that would act more as express conduits than they've had now. So they're still working on making improvements, and as the economy gets better, they'll be in a position where they can make more improvements and more changes.
Thank you.
Now I understand one of the problems we have in the Portland metro areas is we have a partially built high-capacity transit system. It's not done, and it's like if you were a fisherman making a net, if the net's not done, the fish are going to get out. The net needs to be complete before it works at all. And so when we finally get all the routes that have been planned since the 80s built, even the routes that already exist will work better and be more efficient because the net will be complete. The network will be complete, and that will help as well. Yes, sir.
Well, I always take I'm on the opt-in list, and I always get the surveys.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I would put a lot more, I won't even get into it.
Credence?
Well, credence into the fact that when you ask a question, what forms of transportation would you like to see improved?
Mm-hmm.
And they leave out automobiles,
Mhm.
road transportation. It's
Mhm.
like, well, bicycles, this, that, and the other thing.
Well, government
And then they
doesn't,
say, and then you say nothing about automobiles.
government
It's
doesn't
like,
provide
well,
automobile so,
But
yeah,
if you're asking somebody to take a survey,
yeah.
then you gotta ask all the questions, not just the part that you wanna hear about. I mean, that's just my opinion of
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
And the other thing I'd like to see is more support from Metro for the West Side Freeway. I mean, if you're talking about a sustainable, or the greenhouse thing and all that stuff, and I live across the street from right here, and I work in Tualatin, I mean, it's a 2.5 hour public transportation situation to get to work.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. And, so I take the west side bypass as it exists right now. which
River
is over
Road.
the hill. Yeah, you know, Clark Hill and all that.
I
So-
live in Tigard, and I'm a consulting engineer, and I'm currently working at Ronler Acres, so I know
Yeah, exactly.
I know the de facto west side bypass very well.
And so, I mean, our former counselor, she would totally ignore it, like, well, then people should just take transportation that the public provides, you know? It's like, well, that's not really gonna happen, you know? It's just, and so I think that goes back to the opt-in question. Well, do we need a west side bypass? Well, heck yeah, we do.
Mhm.
You know, that's the way Aloha was built, and Hillsborough was built. And, I mean, we've gotta start supporting that, because if you don't get the ball rolling, then the ball just sits there. And it's gonna sit there another 20, 30 years, and it's not gonna get done.
I'll make a very blunt statement and then back it up with some other. There's no political will in the state of Oregon to build new freeways.
But
And-
Hillsborough has opened up, the city of Hillsborough.
Oh, yeah,
has a
I'm
government
well
out-
aware.
So there is political will.
Well, in Hillsborough,
Yes.
when I said in the state of Oregon,
Well,
Well, they're in the state.
not
But even the mayor
well,
has stepped back from that now.
there isn't in Salem, and there's not in Washington DC, and that's where the money would come from.
well, but we have to start somewhere. And so the leadership, I think.
Well, I'm really glad that Mayor Willie brought that up.
Yeah.
And it needs to be brought back to the table, and somebody
Yeah.
explain rationally why it isn't a good idea.
And we
if-
can start
If
with
they
our-
say it isn't a good idea.
We can start with their Metro Councilor, because one of the things I wanted to say is what you haven't talked about so far is what Metro is not doing in transportation planning. Metro has a mandate to plan the transportation. Much of the people in this room have gone to the South Hillsborough meetings, and that is entirely confined within the box that's gonna be South Hillsborough. South Hillsborough is gonna have 50 people, about 50,000 people, about an eighth of a mile that way. It's gonna absolutely crush the county roads to the south and to the east. Kinnaman, all these little networks of roads, 209th, 198th, Farmington, they're all gonna be wiped out. Because everybody's gonna be taking 175th and that 10-mile-an-hour hairpin turn, or they're gonna get killed on that Clark Hill where it comes down into Farmington. I mean, it's all gonna get wiped out.
Well,
So
but-
where is Metro
Well,
planning
what we're being
that?
told by Hillsborough is that the reason that South Hillsborough needs to be built is because they need housing and jobs for there. And the theory is that you live there and you work there. You're not living there and going there. You're
But
not
that's not the way
working
Hillsborough
there and
planned
going
it.
there.
This is all houses out here with a few retail jobs. They put all their jobs to the north, so these people they gotta commute, even though it's 7 miles, but not everybody's gonna work in North Hillsborough.
When the planning that's being done has to include a transportation evaluation as well, and how it works internally and also how it connects to the rest of the system. That needs to be evaluated, everybody has to look at it, has to be signed off on by JPAC, the Metro, the Advisory Council for Transportation. And then that'll have to come to the Metro Council for approval. It'll all have to make sense, it'll all have to balance out. So it'll all be looked at, it'll all be evaluated. What comes out of it? Well, I can't tell you as yet. But I can tell you that on the Metro Council, there's not a lot of support for new highways.
Understood, but
I'm-
nevertheless, as our Metro Councilor here in CPO6 listening to us, what I think many of us feel is that because we're not a city, we haven't been represented with the mayor. And we feel that the transportation needs of Aloha are getting ignored. And that the reality that we live with is TV Highway is at capacity, Farmington's near at capacity. We're all of us are taking the route that you just took to get here. We're going over Clark Hill or 175th. They're developing the other side of the hill, and guess what? They go to the Hillsborough School District. They're going to come this way over the hill to Hill High.
Yeah.
The people in South Hillsborough, a lot of them may work north of here. A lot of them certainly are going to work in Tualatin, Sherwood. They're going to go east to all the activities in Portland. The idea that it's just they're all going to go Cornelius Path north to 26 is not going to happen. TV Highway's at capacity. Where is Metro on this? I mean, Hillsborough's actually doing a pretty good job of planning the narrow Hillsborough piece. The plan calls for Cornelius Pass to come into South Hillsborough and dead end.
Mm-hmm.
Dead end. It doesn't even go through to Farmington. So they're going to all come over to 209th and go down to that intersection with Grab Horn and 209th and Farmington, and they're going to scatter. They're going to go up to Clark Hill. They're going to go over to 175th. They're going to zig and zag through all these county roads with open ditches and no street lights and no sidewalks. And it's really going to be a mess. And I would say, as the Metro Councilor and Metro's mandate to do the regional transportation planning, do the regional transportation planning. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
If I could take a liberty and dovetail on that, I've heard a lot of complaints with 209th right behind us. We've got a plan of 5 lanes pointing at residential areas. And that's the Hillsborough piece that's well planned, is they've figured out that, oh, if we're going to build it, we're going to have to get construction trucks out of there. And 5 lanes with construction trucks makes a lot of sense. But there's a governance issue that I think was sidestepped. And I'm not going to say it was done intentionally, but it's a complex process. And that when this transportation burden is put in unincorporated areas, at Washington County Coordinating Committee, there's a dilution of representation, and that this group is trying to advocate for our fair share, because we're taxpayers too, and that to see Aloha-Reedville and the TV Highway Study specifically say all these updates need to be made in Aloha to accommodate South Cooper Mountain and South Hillsborough. Well, my pain point on that is that if Aloha wanted to incorporate, upzone, and redevelop, as opposed to being handed an urban renewal district, well, our developing neighbors take all the easy pieces and make everything a lot harder for us, and that the representation is difficult because the rumor mill has it as at Washington County Coordinating Committee is that we're unincorporated, we don't want services. So don't give them the money. And there's no voice for Aloha. There's no voice for Cedar Mill that's actively advocating for that. And that's really one of the important reasons that we wanted to have you here. And also, at the risk of taking an extreme liberty, Martin Granum serves on ERMDAC, and many of these people, Anthony serves on every board and then some. You serve on ERMDAC too, and I show up once in a blue moon, and that these are the alpha members of the community, and that there's a real equity issue. And Martin Granum made a point that just had amazing traction, and that with South Hillsborough build-out, the TV Highway Study that Metro is involved with has basically made this representation as like we're more concerned about a functional classification alignment than capacity. Furthermore, the solution is let's put in a bat lane and put them all on the 50. I think let's put them all on the 57 was the comment that I think Mr. Granum astutely made, and that transit's not going to solve the problem when we're at 136% of design capacity, which deputies of Washington County Sheriff's Office have said TV Highway is at 136% of design capacity. So we're looking to Metro for some, well, why did we expand the urban growth boundary? And I know that wasn't your decision, but the TSP update is horrific because Metro's just messaged to the masses that we didn't get a lot of input on it. And I was shocked to see that messaging. But this is a real pain point for this group, and I kind of want to tie a few of those loose ends together, because we, and your interaction with Commissioner Steve Lawrence, you were hunting for density prescriptions in the north end of Tigard, or at least that's what Commissioner Lawrence had alluded to, and that there were prescriptive densities on the outside of the urban growth boundary that said that there will be a freeway facility that will support this density. So now we're getting executive housing that's a lower density and no freeway facility. And that's one of the issues this group has had, is that we had a plan